Disclaimer.
The following content is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained in this presentation constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer by BTC Media, the Let's Talk Bitcoin Network, or any third-party service provider to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments. What's up, guys?
And gals.
Welcome to the Bitcoin Magazine podcast. I'm Graham, or at least that's what my RFID tag tells me.
And I'm Dave. That's what my birth certificate says.
Great. Well, guys, we got a fun episode for y'all today featuring a little roundtable discussion we had with one of our coworkers.
That's right. Brandon Green, he wrote a recent op-ed for Bitcoin Magazine on why electrical companies should be scrambling to get on Bitcoin mining. And considering the fact that Bitcoin mining in total uses the electrical power equivalent to the size of New Zealand,
Wow.
You would think that'd be a pretty penny for those energy companies.
Yep, it's sitting there waiting. But of course, our conversation derails into several different topics like universal basic income, Trump, education.
And of course, the great debate on what candy bar equivalents would be the most popular cryptocurrencies.
That was a fun one. But before we get into all that, guys, we'd like to take a quick moment to tell you about the CoinMine 1.
The CoinMine 1 is the first all-in-one crypto device that's made for everyone. No expertise required.
Just plug it in, connect to Wi-Fi, and pick the coin you want to mine via the CoinMine mobile app, compatible with all iOS and Android devices.
It can mine your favorite cryptocurrencies, which are then immediately stored in your in-app digital wallet. CoinMine even adds new cryptocurrencies when they first launch, like Grin and Handshake, and sometimes before they even make it to the exchanges.
It's lightning fast. And speaking of lightning, it's also a Bitcoin Lightning node, so you can send and receive Bitcoin with anyone, anywhere, instantly for near zero cost. With Bitcoin mode, all your earnings are automatically converted into Bitcoin, and eventually they'll be able to go directly to your Lightning channels.
On top of all that, the CoinMine is automatically upgraded over the air, so you don't have to waste time keeping the software up to date or adding new cryptocurrencies when they launch.
This is a great device for anyone who's ever been interested remotely about mining but didn't really want to go down the technical rabbit hole like me.
So what are you waiting for? Go to coinmine.com/bitmag and get $50 off your next cryptocurrency miner. Again, that's coinmine.com/bitmag for $50 off.
I'm a fan of all candies. I would say, or not all candies. I'm a chocolate
right.
guy, not a candy guy.
You're right, though. It says there's a Reese's Take 5.
Oh, cool. No,
And
good
it
for me.
might have just spun off into its own thing.
Yeah, I guess it could have. But one of the only chocolate candies that I don't like would be like the Butterfinger, which I know, there are people in this office who are big Butterfingers fans.
Mm-hmm.
David isn't he?
Yeah.
David Bailey being one of the primary Butterfinger guys. But they just don't do it for me, And it's like, it's so buttery in the middle.
Yeah.
And then it like clumps into your teeth.
Oh, man, it like cakes your teeth.
Yeah.
It's almost...
The eating experience isn't a 10 out of 10.
Yeah. It's I don't know. Butterfinger is one of those weird things that like I'll enjoy it, like really, really enjoy it, but very sporadically. So like, I haven't had a Butterfinger in like a year.
Yeah, and it's
Then
like
I'll
it's
have
sitting
one.
right here.
And then I don't want it again for a long time.
Right, exactly.
I like I can enjoy Snickers like more regularly. But that's sort of like the standard bar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the one that I like really enjoyed a lot until I kind of ate myself out of it, was the Almond Joy.
Dude,
Yeah.
Almond Joys
Almond
are
Joys
so
are
good.
good.
I feel like the cryptocurrency crowd would like Almond Joys. I don't know why, because it seems like the alternative candy bar.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
That's
Yeah.
fair.
Like your normal person would probably just like stick to Snickers or whatever.
Mhm.
But like cryptocurrency people, like they're on the fringe, So you're like, I'm gonna go to the bottom of the shelf, and that's where the Almond Joys are.
It'd be a
Or
great
like a whatchamacallit.
Yeah, it'd be like a
Yeah.
great branding exercise for them to be like try and claim that they're the official chocolate bar of Bitcoiners,
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
There is no official chocolate bar of Bitcoiners.
Also, I was gonna ask you if let's take the top 5 cryptocurrencies.
Mm-hmm.
What's their candy bar equivalent?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say So I would actually say though, like Bitcoin would be the Hershey's bar, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's tried and true. It's the original.
You don't need to fuss with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you got Ethereum, and that would be like your Snickers, right? Because it's like, oh, look at us, we're chocolate and we're caramel and we're peanuts, and we're like all this kind of stuff going together.
They're trying to do everything.
Yeah, and we're like they're trying to. I think it was you that said it, but like they're trying to like be the standard candy bar that everyone thinks about. Maybe you said that, Graham, but
yes, like Snickers is just kind of like the standard.
yeah. So I feel like that's what Ethereum is, and then like Ripple would be like, dude,
Butterfinger, I think.
Ripple could probably be a Butterfinger. It could also be like I could see it being like an M&M, because everyone's like, oh, like it's a candy, like it counts as a candy bar, but like it's not a candy bar.
No, I hate when they take M&Ms and put them in candy bars.
Oh yeah,
I don't get the point.
It's not a good eating experience either.
Yeah,
because it's like, oh, this is nice and like creamy chocolate, and oh, there's a hard,
just like candy
other
shell,
chocolate
just,
inside.
Like someone just crunched up glass and threw it in your candy bar.
Yeah.
So what? I mean, the next one down is we got to like there's Litecoin and then like Bcash. What's Bcash? Is that a Hershey's almond bar? Like they took the tried and true and threw a bunch of quote, I'm doing air quotes, improvements.
So I would say first of all that Litecoin would be like a Hershey's Kiss, right?
Okay.
Because it's still that Hershey's bar, just in a different form, and like everyone, if you have the choice between a Hershey's bar and a Hershey's Kiss, you're gonna take the Hershey's bar. But like a lot of people love to give out kisses for Halloween and stuff. So
especially my neighbor,
it's got its niche kind of. I'm sorry, no one is excited about getting Hershey's Kisses for Halloween, but
I meant actual.
That one ran over my head.
Well, if you're still with us, obviously we're joined by our coworker Brandon.
Hey guys,
we don't give away last names on this show, by the way.
Good.
We don't do last names.
We don't do last names, although people probably know by now.
Yeah.
But Brandon, you recently wrote an opinion piece that we'd like to talk to you about today.
I did, yes.
And not the one on Taylor Swift's contract dispute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very opinionated on that, but I'd save those opinions for myself.
Nor the one on Trump's immigration policy, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It's a few pages long. It's actually about 60, and you can find it on Bloomberg, but we're not talking about that one.
Dave, I thought you were going to say, I thoroughly enjoyed Trump's immigration policies.
Children in cages, it's a real
oh, God.
Great new idea. It's really catching on.
Oh, God.
Sarcasm. Hashtag sarcasm.
In all seriousness, the article you wrote is called Bitcoin Uses a Lot of Energy, so Where Are the Energy Companies? Can you just sort of break down why you wrote this? How you like kind of got around to even, approaching this topic? Yeah.
So for starters, I'm coming from, I work here at BTC. We run Bitcoin Magazine. We are definitely one of the bigger kind of microphones for Bitcoin. But being, so involved in the space and seeing all the storylines, I kind of got the sense that we're starting to repeat ourselves. There's a lot of trendy things everyone now has written their own opinion piece about. For instance, mining, it uses a lot of energy, but it's all renewables, so good for us. And like, the halvening's coming, and institutions are coming, and, fill in the blank. It's all been said before.
Kind of the repetition of narratives.
Yeah. And that's effective. But, for someone who's in Bitcoin and who already knows all those narratives, I wanted to kind of talk about something that maybe people haven't really discussed as much. And I'm sure there's, tons of pieces out there on this, but not something that I've seen, as concisely put. And so that was kind of my goal.
Yeah. And first, I just think like you do a lot of op-ed, right? Op-ed articles for Bitcoin Magazine. And I always think that's interesting why you take the op-ed approach as opposed to trying to like cover a topic.
I think it's because I'm not, a writer for Bitcoin Magazine. So I really only put together these long form pieces when something really catches my attention or, piques my interest. And so I kind of want to sink my teeth into it. And a lot of times it doesn't come in the form of a news story or, something too relevant to what's going on today. So it tends to just kind of take shape of an op-ed more so.
That's cool though. You get to go at your own rhythm as opposed to like reacting. You know.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm lucky.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the stuff out there, like you said, it's sort of an echo chamber, a lot of knee-jerk reaction stuff.
That's news in general too.
I mean, that is
downside,
true, and even more so in crypto because I personally think it's a lot of just like sitting around waiting. But I mean, that's just what it's an experiment right now. So everyone's just kind of like waiting for the next thing to happen, and then we all jump on it. Like, remember Libra month?
Yeah, Libra month.
Literally
Yeah.
everything was Libra. That it was just like okay.
Everybody had their opinion. Everybody was coming to say that they could talk about
Libra's so big. This is huge.
Yeah,
I mean, it was pretty big, but I'm glad we're not all talking about it every stinking day.
Well, and my hot take 2 cents on this too is that one thing that Bitcoin Magazine does well is it tends to be a little bit slower on the gun on a lot of these kind of hot button news topics because there's a lot of reasons, but I think one of the more interesting ones is that in this space, trust is so important and it's so hard to come by, right? Like this is the space that's probably the most full of scammers anywhere out there. But that means that if you kind of mishandle someone's trust, even like maybe not on purpose, maybe you just, didn't get a story right the first time around because not all the facts were like gathered, but you still wanted to put something out, all of a sudden you can very quickly kind of harm your trust with the community.
Absolutely.
And fortunately, because we've taken this kind of metered approach and more thought out, more thoughtful narrative pieces, we've managed to do I think a pretty good job of getting the story right the first time. And that really helps kind of maintain us as I believe, the most trusted voice in Bitcoin. So, there's my two cents and totally unbiased opinion on that. But it is what it is.
We're the best source. We're the best voice. We have the best writers.
Everybody loves us.
Everybody loves us. They're just the best. I think we do a Trump impersonation literally at least every other episode.
Yeah, I'm still not good at it.
Dave, your Trump impersonation kind of sounds a little like a robot, but he kind of does talk robotically.
You really
Robot
think
with
that?
big lips.
And Dave is leaving.
Walking out. So energy consumption.
Yes.
How long have you been thinking about like the Bitcoin energy consumption problem?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say probably about as long as everyone else has, right? I mean, it's been a pretty big forefront kind of story, especially in the mainstream, especially as a criticism of Bitcoin for a long time now. And so everyone's kind of been ruminating on this, and there are some really good counter arguments to Bitcoin's energy consumption, kind of like what we already touched on earlier. But what kind of hit me is we're also kind of running Bitcoin 2019, Bitcoin 2020 now that we just announced a couple days ago. And one of the kind of exercises that we have to do is we have to look around at all the companies that are in the Bitcoin space and then look around at all the companies that aren't in the Bitcoin space, but that we strongly believe should be. And just haven't manifest themselves anywhere around, the public-facing kind of face of Bitcoin. And one of the spaces that just really jumps off the page at you is energy companies. I mean, they probably make more off Bitcoin than any other industry in the world. There's a bold statement, but I mean, I crunched the numbers right here in the article, and I think you get to somewhere around $7 or $8 million a day spent on electricity by miners. So we're talking, times that by 365
You're saying
days.
powering miners, not okay.
Yes, yeah. So what do miners spend on electricity on average? If they were I have the number for if they were going to do in the U.S., which is a little bit higher price than what the average cost of a miner is, which I think is like or like 5 cents per kilowatt hour ish. Mm-hmm. So doing the math there would probably maybe round out to like 6.5 million per day. But still, I mean, $6.5 million a day being spent by miners. Like, I don't think there's Maybe BitMEX has more in trading volume that they get in fees, but I don't know. I mean, that is a huge industry that is making tons of money off Bitcoin. And it's just like, where are you guys? Like, you should be fighting tooth and nail to get as much Bitcoin mining business as you possibly can, kind of for the reasons outlined. But like, this is predictable, steady stream of money. It's like someone shooting nickels into a jar and them just collecting the jar every day, and it's just a constant stream. I mean, every single company should want this. This is the ideal customer.
And like one of the reasons you lay out for why that is that Bitcoin mining is it's a plateau basically. It's always Bitcoin miners are always consuming energy, whereas like humans, for instance, are going to be turning their electricity on and off constantly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, so it's a steady draw, like you said. One of the biggest places that energy companies will lose money, like power suppliers will lose money, is the unpredictableness of the power grid. Now, they have a lot of different ways that they've optimized for this. And, they have a pretty good predictive kind of technology to tell when there's going to be a sudden surge and people turning lights on, as the sun goes down, or primetime television comes on, and they can kind of bake that into the way that they're, firing off their coal plants or, what have you. But, it still is ultimately an optimization problem. And there's still going to be minimized profits in those kind of inflection points in energy draw. Right. And so what Bitcoin doesn't have is that. It's so steady, it's so predictable, and it's literally just printing money for these energy providers.
But you also said that a lot of energy is wasted, right? And that's just because these other areas are unpredictable?
Well, yeah. So kind of flip the problem on its head, right? If you're producing a whole bunch of energy, a whole bunch of electricity, and then you find that the power grid isn't using all of it, right? Now you got to figure out a way to store that excess capacity. And there are some ways that they do it. You can create a system where you pump water up a hill, and then that potential energy stored in the water, you can let it out later on, and it flows down, and it basically runs a little turbine and produces electricity later. You can put it all in a battery, but like all these things are added on ways to kind of store electricity, and ultimately all of them introduce inefficiencies into the system.
It probably takes resources just to do that, just to save it. So
right.
It takes more work, and you're potentially not even going to use it.
Exactly.
Right.
And batteries have a capacity, so does pumping up water
are
up a hill. Batteries are expensive.
Yeah.
We're getting better at these things, but the Bitcoin solution just kind of erases that problem altogether, and that's what everyone would kind of prefer if given the opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even if you had Bitcoin mining, it's not like they've still power companies could still use the battery technique to save more energy if they needed to. This is just the best case they could have for clients.
Totally.
So let me ask you this: what does this scenario look like as far as getting to these miners? Are we talking about an energy company saying, "Hey, come set up mining facilities near us," or with us? How would you see that working?
Yeah. So I mean, I couldn't tell you what happens behind closed doors kind of thing. Sure. How those negotiations go about. What I can point out though is that if you look at mining today, it is almost entirely done, or at least a vast majority is done in China. And why is that? Well, it's because China, as part of their deal to bring their country to a more renewable energy forefront.
World domination.
Yes. Yeah, all of that. This was actually, I think, I'm not going to say exactly where it was because I can't remember off the top of my head and I don't want to misquote, but one of these kind of international agreements to make your country go to X amount of renewable energy. China did it by basically building a whole bunch of hydroelectric power in a bunch of areas of China where it's totally rural and no one lives there. And therefore, right. No one actually uses this power they're doing. But on paper, they're now going towards, 20% renewables. So they have this huge amount of excess capacity of kind of energy production and literally nothing to use it on. And so these mining companies have somehow or another contacted these companies that are running these hydroelectric plants and basically said, hey, you're not using all this electricity, but it's all here. Can we use it to mine for X amount of dollars? And it's either we just let this all go to waste or we say yes and make a whole bunch of money. And it kind of becomes a no-brainer for them.
Right.
I would see very similar conversations happening in the US. I mean, there's tons of areas that have maybe not the extent of a full-on electric, hydroelectric power grid that is just waiting to have a customer, but there's excess capacity all the time in all sorts of different areas, and mining is so plug and play, pardon the pun, that you can, it doesn't take a ton in order for you to start actually mining somewhere and start making money. And so it's such a no-brainer. I keep coming back to that. It is such a no-brainer for these power companies to start talking to these big mining farms and figure out ways to work together.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine the other side of that too is them just not understanding Bitcoin yet, right? So it's still, everything kind of falls back in that adoption cycle.
Absolutely.
Not even cycle, but problem, I guess.
But you know what that means, though, is that this isn't a question of aligned incentives. It's a question of time, right? So eventually the answer is going to be, here we are. Here are the mining company, or here are the power companies. They're here. They're talking to the miners. We just haven't gotten there yet. And so this is supposed to, it's not like I would be surprised if a whole bunch of power companies were reading Bitcoin Magazine. But, maybe someone who knows someone eventually sees this and passes it along. And it could be just like a little marble in a jar of boulders that can start getting this ball rolling.
Yeah, and Brandon, I know we talked earlier in the hall, and you'd kind of also brought up the fact that really they don't need to even know that much about what Bitcoin does or how it works or anything like that. They just need to know their return on their investment, basically.
Right. It's can you sign this contract that agrees to 5 cents per kilowatt hour and draw 1 gigawatt a day, and if your answer is yes, then we have a deal, and mining companies can figure out all the rest. They can build the stuff. It's just the power company agreeing to this set price for their power. And it's a good point. They don't need to know exactly how Bitcoin works to know a good deal when they see one.
Yeah, I've heard you talk a lot about the future of solar and wind and renewable resources too. Where do you think that fits into the equation? Where
it's a great question.
Incentives lie?
So first of all, one of the most interesting stories I think is the story of Bitmain, and you'll see where I'm going in a second. But Bitmain came onto the scene in I don't know what year, maybe 2012, 2011, something like that. Started democratizing mining. They created these rigs. They could sell them, in somewhat of a manufacturing capacity to customers, and customers could run them, and it democratized mining. The chips in the miners started out being consumer grade. A consumer could basically go out to Radio Shack or whatever, definitely not Radio Shack, but Amazon, and buy these chips. They were not cutting edge, but because Bitmain had aligned incentives where the more they optimized their chips, the more they got to the cutting edge, the more money they would make off their miners, and therefore the more money they can pour onto research and development to create even better chips. And so it's this positive feedback loop where if you can make more money doing research and implementing that research into your product, you're going to continue to do that, and you're going to continue to get to the cutting edge. And nowadays, Bitmain is pushing, Intel and Samsung on the cutting edge of chip manufacturing technology. And it took less than a decade for them to go from consumer grade to high end chips. The same thing, the same positive feedback mechanism exists absolutely for something like solar energy, where if you've got a miner attached to a solar panel, and that miner is now just printing free money because, solar energy going straight to a solar panel, going straight to a miner, there's no draw right there in terms of fixed electricity cost. You can basically just take that miner and the money that it makes and put it into research and development to create even better solar panels.
That's super interesting.
And it works. It's not like this is some theory. You can just look at it and say, oh yeah, this totally makes sense that this kind of feedback mechanism would work. So I think Bitcoin mining should be one of the biggest catalysts of research and development in solar energy and in some of these renewable energy sectors.
Well, you're talking about these power grids, and obviously my one-track mind goes to Chernobyl, just because that's like the last I've like really looked into like nuclear, like any sort of energy thing is nuclear reactors. And I was thinking about how they explained how the nuclear reactor works.
Mm-hmm.
And
are you talking about the end scene where he
Yeah,
uses
like
cards?
the blue and the red. Cards.
And they're like trying to control power levels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about how funny, like that's exactly like what the Fed does.
Yeah.
Like verbatim is they're like trying to control like inflation and interest rates and exchange rates.
Right.
It's like kind of crazy.
Have you ever seen National Lampoon's Vegas Vacation
No.
with Chevy Chase? There's a part. I'm connecting a lot of dots here because there's a part where he's at the Hoover Dam.
Yeah.
So we're talking about hydroelectric power, Hoover Dam. You're talking about controlling resources and power. Well, there's a scene where he's in the dam and he, I think he like touches the wall and like a bunch of water starts spraying out. And then he takes his gum and he like tries to plug it up. And then another like spout comes out. It's like a classic, Abbott and Costello gag. But that's how I imagine the Federal Reserve is working. And there's like all these leaks and there's like, okay, like let's move resources over here.
Yeah.
Let's raise interest rates over here.
Pull a lever.
Like, it's just all this stuff is like just constantly like firing off.
Well, so what's actually really interesting is you remember Paris?
Mm-hmm.
So Paris got his master's in process controls, and process controls is like one of the most difficult kind of areas for engineering because it's basically kind of the intro to process controls, at least for chemical engineers, which is my background, is the 2-bucket experiment. Where basically you have one bucket with a little hole in it and then another bucket below. And then you have like maybe a drain on the second bucket. And this hole doesn't allow you, and basically you have a hose going into the top bucket, right? And the hole isn't big enough for all of the water from the hose to go straight to the second bucket, right? So some of it starts accumulating in the first bucket. And then as it accumulates, that changes the speed through which it flows through that hole and into the second bucket. And basically you can put a little volume meter on the second bucket to see when it reaches a certain level. And your goal is basically to change the rate of the hose, like the water flowing through the hose, so that you get steady state flow through both buckets. Basically, whatever is coming through the hose equals the amount that's going out of the second bucket.
Right.
And if you're only doing it by measuring the volume of the second bucket, then you have this variability in the first bucket that basically makes it so that first it'll cut the hose amount, and then you'll still have a lot of drainage from that first bucket, but now the bucket 1 starts decreasing in volume, and then bucket 2 will be increasing in volume after it does this change on the hose. And so you see these like delayed effects, basically, is what I'm getting to, of whatever kind of variable you're actually controlling. And you have to figure out how to account for those delayed effects and be able to, kind of predict what those effects will look like before everything happens, so that you can ultimately get the desired result, right? So put another way, basically it's like, if I am the Fed and I'm controlling the economy, and I know that if I lower interest rates, it's going to print more money, which then allows for more investment into banks, which then allows for more people getting mortgages, which allows for more people to be, saving or investing, and so like all these different, because they don't want to keep all their money in a bank because the interest rates are too low. They can put it in the stock market, right? So if their goal is to prop up the stock market, they have to. If all they can change is the interest rate, they have to basically have these really accurate predictive kind of mechanisms to see the process through which that money flows from lowered interest rates to people buying more stocks. And it's not a direct thing. And so all these other things are kind of like happening on the sideline. And it's, if economies were efficient, Keynesian economics could make sense, right? But you just, the fundamental assumption of it is that all humans will behave rationally in a rational market. And that right there is the fundamental flaw of Keynesian economics. I mean, it just is. Humans are irrational, and you cannot predict all the other external extenuating circumstances that are going to affect what you're doing. And so,
so you're saying most people buy high and sell low.
Well, being in the Bitcoin space, I can tell you for a fact most people buy high and sell low.
Wait, so how would you compare Austrian economics as being like if Keynesian is how would you explain it?
So I would
if
say
it's everyone acting rationally, what's Austrian economics?
I would say if you want to kind of compare nuts to nuts, the fundamental tenet of Keynesian economics is humans will behave rationally in a rational market, right? And then they kind of build. It's like the I think, therefore I am of Keynesian.
Mm-hmm.
The I think, therefore I am of Austrian economics is that the market will outcompete any one central entity. I think that is actually a very provable fundamental tenet. I mean, because you can't point to a single entity ever that has outcompeted a market if you change the time scale to, long enough. Every single empire that's ever existed has fallen. Every single currency that's ever existed has debased in value. Every single company that has ever existed, either has failed or will fail, right? I mean, it's kind of the fundamental truth. Even some of the big stalwart kind of companies of the U.S., think your retailers, think Macy's, Sears, JCPenney, who's now like below $1 in stock price, ultimately they're going to get outcompeted by someone who's nimbler like an Amazon. It's just the way the market works. And so when you start by that fundamental thesis, you can now build much more accurate economic models. And maybe the best economic model you can possibly build is something like Bitcoin, where you have no single entity controlling it. There's no single person who's going to end up getting outcompeted by everyone because everyone controls it. It is the market controlling the currency. And like Bitcoin is Keynesian economics in practice.
You mean Austrian economics?
I mean, yeah, sorry, Austrian economics.
I was asking Dave this the other day, like in this moon, to the moon scenario where Bitcoin is adopted and everybody's using it, what does the inequality look like between the people who have a bunch of Bitcoin, who are buying a lot of it right now, as opposed to the people who got in way too late and are now forced to like adopt this new method? Like, what does that look like? Because I mean, people are like filthy rich right now. What
Totally.
happens in 20, 30 years?
So if you want, I'd kind of had written out a while back some bold predictions for the next bull market.
Mm-hmm.
One of those bold predictions is going to be that Satoshi will be the richest person in the world in the next bull market.
If he's still alive.
Yeah, well, whoever he is, they are.
Yeah, sure.
Satoshi, right? Whoever it is will be the richest entity person in the world in this next bull market. It can totally happen. Right now, I think Satoshi is a billionaire, right?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask,
million
I wonder how
coins
much-
times $10,000 a coin. That's $10 billion, right?
Let's do a quick calculation on my smart machine.
Crunching the numbers in my head, I think that's right.
What you said, 10 million coins?
If he has 1 million coins at 10K Bitcoin prices, that should be 10 billion. So
I believe so.
if you want to do, say the next bull market goes to 350K, times that basically by 3.5 or 35. And you've got Satoshi sitting at, $350 billion in net worth just from, these few wallets that we know he mined to. So
Yeah, so when Bitcoin was at 20,000 back in December 2017, Satoshi was worth $19.6 billion. And that made him the 56th richest person alive.
That's crazy.
yeah, so I mean, just wait till the next bull market. But back to your actual question,
Right.
which is the disparity between the top and the bottom.
Yes.
It is going to happen. I mean, it's a fact. There's no way to redistribute the wealth of Bitcoin from the people who own a lot of it to the people who own a little of it.
Without them actually just
Without
giving
using
it out.
guns, which
Sure.
is, has been done before,
Yeah.
right? The caveat, though, is that you're creating a deflationary system so that the people who own a little bit of Bitcoin, that little bit of Bitcoin will always grow in value in regards to the rest of the world, right? This is in hyper Bitcoinization, which, we're assuming here. But there's never going to be more Bitcoin printed than the 21 million. And even that, you've got, 4 million that's lost. And more will be lost or will be trapped as dust in wallets for the rest of time, right? And so even though maybe today I'm sitting on 0.1 or 0.001 Bitcoins, a year from today, that may be worth, the equivalent of 0.002 Bitcoins today, right? So you do have the disparity of wealth, but you also have the rising tide lifting all boats. And that's what we don't have today, right? The people who make, $10,000 a year in salary don't get to sit on those $10,000 or whatever amount they don't have to immediately turn into consumption and have that grow in value. No, they're actually being inflated out of the system even more. And now they're $10,000 worth $9,000. And like they're trapped in a vicious cycle that literally beats down our lowest people because they don't have access to the financial tools that the rest of us have.
Yeah.
That's what Bitcoin's about. You're never going to be able to produce equity of outcomes, right? You're never going to have the top equal the bottom. That's a utopia. That's socialism. And it's not going to happen in a way that people don't get killed, right? It never has. It never will. What you can optimize for, though, is to create a system where the bottom 10% aren't priced out of the ability to interact in a society in a value adding and value deriving way. And that's what we're creating.
Guys, should we take a quick break?
Yeah, let's take a break.
Okay, we'll be right back. So, Dave, what have you been working on lately?
Not too much, dude. Just been surfing the darknet.
A little scared to ask, but why?
Privacy, bro. A wise man once said, prudence counsels prevention.
Huh?
I was getting a bunch of spam emails. It was driving me nuts. So I figured I'd move to a private browser that doesn't collect all my data.
Well, Dave, now that you mention it, our newest sponsor, Haven, is a privacy-focused app that is made for someone just like you.
Ooh, Haven. It's for buying and selling things online, right?
Yeah, not just that. It's actually the world's first privacy-focused shopping and chatting app for iOS and Android. You can shop and chat with other users under the security of end-to-end encryption.
It says here that Haven also lets you buy and sell with cryptocurrencies like Litecoin, Zcash, and of course the much more proportionally greater by market capitalization, Bitcoin.
Bitcoin? I'll have to look into that. Well, Haven sounds like Craigslist for the modern-day cypherpunk. How does its privacy work?
Haven uses several advanced technologies to keep your information private while being simple to use. You don't need to know how decentralization, cryptocurrency, or end-to-end encryption work. They just work for you on Haven.
The keys to your cryptocurrency, the data about your transactions, all your chat messages, all that sensitive information is stored on your device locally and is completely in your control.
Right, and all communication with other nodes is peer-to-peer and end-to-end encrypted. There's no middlemen involved in transactions.
Well, Dave, if there's one thing I hate above all things, it's middlemen.
Middlemen can die.
They can die a coward's death.
Check out Haven today. It's available on iOS and Android app stores.
I was reading something today about the problem with minimum wage and just how the U.S. hasn't factored for inflation ever, like every other country does.
Yeah.
And so it rises like automatically with inflation, so people can actually like live on a minimum wage. And I just thought it was fascinating that the country that can just do whatever they want because they're so rich can't even provide the basic needs for its people.
Right. And then, the flip side,
it's really troubling.
The flip side too is, yes, we have not indexed minimum wage at all with inflation. And then a few places are like, you know what, we're going to do it right now. And then you have like Seattle jumping from a $7.50 minimum wage to a $15 minimum wage, like in the span of a year or so. Yeah. And it's what kind of shock does that add to the system,
Washington
right?
is one of the only states that actually at a state level changed their minimum wage system to actually account for inflation. So
right.
I think that's why it caught up really fast, and it's gonna keep going up incrementally with inflation.
Right, but it's just like that's a dangerous thing to try to all of a sudden have like
inflation in general. Like at what point does it just bottom out,
Ooh, yeah.
Another thing about minimum wage too, and I don't know if this is valid because I think accounting for inflation I think that's just basically what like should be done so that everybody can, keep the same level of means they have. But the other argument is if you increase minimum wage too high, it'll just lead to automation. It'll just be like that might be what like the market demands.
Mm-hmm.
So like companies will try to automate things more readily if they have to pay workers higher. It's just going to push us towards automation.
Yeah.
Dude, we could have a 2.5-3 hour conversation on just that topic right there.
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure.
Some of the most interesting thought in politics right now is happening around that problem of automation and like challenges to solutions. Andrew Yang's problem or Andrew Yang's solution is a really interesting one in my opinion. I mean, it is very much deserving of real thought and critique around. Because
are you talking about the $1,000 a month?
The UBI. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is in a lot of ways it's brilliant. In a lot of ways it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's like it's so interesting to kind of fully formulate. In a lot of ways it's good for Bitcoin, right? But
it's funny. I asked that question on Twitter. I was like, "What would you do with an extra $1,000 a day?" And not a single person said, "Buy Bitcoin." But I don't have a lot of Bitcoin followers, so follow me on Twitter.
Yeah, where are you guys?
I'm at Grambo First Blood. Obviously, a big Rambo fan. So
nice.
I'm gonna cut that out.
I'm not saying. I'm not saying.
I'm not saying that.
But yeah, guys, like if you want to look at a really interesting, like 3-pronged look at automation. Look at Andrew Yang and Joe Rogan, that podcast. Look at Naval and Joe Rogan, because in that podcast he actually talks kind of and speaks to Andrew Yang's kind of UBI and has some very valid critiques for it.
I've heard that one, the Naval one. It's really good.
Yeah, it is really, for a lot of reasons, it's really
John
good.
Oliver did a good piece on automation.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because there's a lot of argument that it would create more jobs. Let me double check that. Real quick.
I've heard that. I've heard that though. I don't know about John Oliver, but like I've definitely heard that argument.
But then the third one that I would look at too is the Portal podcast with Eric Weinstein and his first episode with Peter Thiel, and they come from a totally different perspective, which is where is the automation, right? Like where is all this progress we keep talking about that's coming, which I think is also an incredibly jolting and jarring kind of take. Because they have a really interesting kind of thesis in general about the total progress of the society, and are we actually progressing at the rate we think we are, or are we all saying we are and nodding and agreeing because none of us want to like be like, well, I'm not progressing, and then look like we're being left behind.
Yeah, it's a lot of like birds of paradise types of like everybody just like flashing their feathers and like it, but that's what you have to do to be successful.
Yeah,
at anything really, you have to like portray this image of success and progress. And
yeah,
that's interesting. Like, is it actually happening? Back in like the 60s and 70s, they were making cars that could go like they got like 40 miles a gallon, and now like the Prius, like the big like energy efficient car gets like 45 on the highway, or in town, like by one or the other. But like what, like it's been 40 years, almost 50 years, and we haven't figured that out yet. Now
the things that we have kind of optimized for and that make it harder is now the cars are safer, so they're heavier, which makes them less fuel efficient, and now they have different gizmos and gadgets that add computer space to it and weigh the car down more. So
I don't know, man. Those cars were heavy as hell back in the 70s. They were made out of steel.
It's true, but
now they're made out of plastic.
Now we need them to collapse better for impact, and safety and that kind of stuff. So it's
yeah, I don't know. I think it's oil companies.
I think it's a lot of things. There are a few systems today that incentives just aren't aligned across the system, and not for the sake of it's not malice. It's just when you let too many people have voices in, regulation, they end up optimizing for themselves. Surprise, surprise. And so, some of those systems are like healthcare today, and how Obamacare was created, and the fact that the insurance companies got a seat at the table when they were crafting Obamacare, and now all of a sudden, the thing that's supposed to kind of supplant in healthcare insurance companies ended up optimizing to make sure that they were protected in the system. And it's like, well, what did that do to everyone? Well, it didn't, it wasn't good for the consumer. Education's another one that I could go into for hours.
God. Yeah, my parents were teachers, so I could too.
The entire education system is optimized to birds of paradise it, literally to everyone pretending like what they're doing is really good and really smart, and everyone's getting A's because everyone's an A player kind of thing. And it's just it's creating this bubble of success that like could ripple way across our society. I mean, why do you think people, one of the reasons anyways, why is there so much mental, kind of stress on people these days? Well, what if it's because we grew up everyone succeeding so much in everything they do, and then kind of like life hits you in the face, and you don't know how to cope with that because you didn't build those mechanisms.
Wait, I'm not the best?
Yeah, I know,
what
right?
happened?
It just, gosh, so many tangents and rabbit holes. But
there was something recently where like, I think it was like a school board or like a district where like they got caught like not like cheating the test, but they were like just making it easier.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, and just like make their school look like, oh, look at all of our grades are going up, like progress, right?
So this is what I'm talking about with the aligned incentives, right? As a school, your goal is for everyone to get really good grades and everyone to graduate, because that's what you kind of
that's how you measure your success.
Exactly. You measure it on graduation rate, and you measure it on school, like college placement. And in order for kids to go to good colleges, they need good grades, and in order for them to graduate, they need to pass. And like the incentives are not there to actually measure and test students and really even teach them. Like you're teaching them now for tests and being able to do well on standardized tests instead of actually grasp complex topics.
Right.
And it's just there's so much issue with the way that this incentives are aligned there. I mean, it's wild.
Did you guys go to public school?
I did.
I went to public school.
No, I didn't.
Knives and all.
Yeah. Grew up on the school bus, man.
It was great. We could go on and on about education. It was pretty piss poor, in my opinion. I thought my college education was kind of a joke too.
Agree.
In all honesty, I didn't really like study that hard. I just studied the nights before test, and I was still on the honor roll like my last 2 years of school.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know how that happened, but it's like,
so
I wasn't challenged that much.
I was in a really great program at the University of Alabama, the fellows program there. That is probably the exception to the rule. That was a very, very good program. But, my other, parts of my education, by no specific fault of their own, because they're all operating in this same system that every other college is doing, made it so that I was learning everything for the test. I was doing way more memorizing than grasping complex topics. It was all about, can you figure out what questions are going to be asked on the test and how they're going to be worded, and then just develop that schema to plug and play and go.
Study guides.
And it's just it is not how you actually teach anyone at all.
Yeah. I mean, I respect the hell out of Pat. Pat's one of our coworkers. He left school to go study under, Mike Gregg or Greg Mike. Is it Mike Gregg or Greg Mike? I've seen it both ways.
Mike Gregg.
I think it's Mike Gregg. And it's just like, he just applied it and like just went and lived it and learned it. And like, he's one of the most talented artists I've ever met.
Oh yeah.
And school, you're right. It's just like, they're going to like narrow it down for you and say, just follow these steps and you'll pass. You really don't learn anything until 5 years later when you're out in the real world and you get hit in the fucking face with reality.
Yeah.
Right. Like, shit, I got to start all over again.
Yeah. And it's like, everyone now has to go to college in order to get a good job. Right. But then everyone can also, with the same hand, say, "Yeah, I didn't really learn that much in college." And it's like,
it's crazy.
What kind of system are we making?
So watered down. Yeah, it's crazy.
Where it's like, I know this is not benefit from me. I'm gonna be in debt for the majority of the rest of my life because of it. But I have to do it in order to get a job that pays more than $40K a year, kind of thing. And it's just like, why did we make this the way things work? And it's about aligned incentives.
Yeah, no, we were talking about renewable resources earlier, and I have a cousin that went to trade school, and I think it took him like a year or two, and he works in the energy sector, and like he's making bank, like he like does really well.
Yeah,
and like he didn't go to college.
Yeah,
it's just it blows my mind. Like I feel like we're getting obviously off topic, but it does all kind of come back to like the irrationality of education of, our energy system, of, our cars, transportation, how we live, and money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's been a heck of a day, Dave.
Yeah, going back to like irrationality.
Right.
Oh my God, I'm gonna tie it back in. Like, okay, so
Here we go.
Yeah. So like
50 minutes later.
proof of work is irrationally high in energy consumption. It's just a completely complicated like set of calculations. And in your article you say it's not a bug, it's a feature. Can you explain that?
Totally. So, it's the fact that, if we created a system where money can be created out of thin air,
then we have that system, right now?
Yeah, we would already have that. Well, yeah, we do have that. But like that system wouldn't be an efficient system of value creation. If you can just create value out of thin air with no cost, then you're just going to keep on creating value, and eventually you're going to inflate the heck out of the value, and it's not going to be valuable, right? Proof of work is a beautiful system where you have to expend a crap ton of energy and a crap ton of computational resources in order to be able to produce these 12.5 Bitcoins in a 10-minute period that we have today. And it's like that should be seen as a necessity to make something that's truly valuable. You need to have a cost to create the Bitcoins, and that cost should be just about the equivalent of how much the Bitcoins are worth, right? That's just logical. If you're going to create something that's worth 12.5 Bitcoins times 10K, which is 1.25 million, that's not right, $125,000
right,
every 10 minutes, you're going to have to, sorry, let me put this another way. If you start from a fundamental belief of, the second law of thermodynamics, or the first law of thermodynamics, which is energy cannot be created or destroyed.
Right.
Value is energy in a box. It's energy that you can store. And one of the most effective ways to be able to store it and make it continue to retain its value or even grow in value is to make it transportable. So if you have a mechanism by which you can convert energy into a long-term store of value that you can transact, that is nearing a perfect system. And so you can't just create these Bitcoins out of thin air. You have to transfer the value of the energy it takes to create them and kind of imbue that into the Bitcoins in order for them to actually be the value that they are. Otherwise, it's just pure speculation. And that's really the heart of, in my opinion, and the Brandon thesis, what makes Bitcoin valuable. It's that it is so cost intensive to create new ones. And then, I also make the argument in the article that because it's so energy intensive, that makes it that much more secure. Not only do you have to find a whole bunch of miners to attack this Bitcoin, blockchain, but you also have to get the energy to power all of those miners. And that would drive up the cost of energy. It's so difficult to be able to do all of that. Not to mention, I think I also go into this in the article, but, say you have 51% hash power now. Well, in order to get an attack that's economically secure, we generally use the rule of thumb of 6 confirmations, because that's what makes it economically kind of hard to go ahead and reverse, because it's like, 6 block rewards and 6 amounts of transactions confirmed and all this kind of thing. But if you only have 51% and you're trying to attack, that means that you need to mine 6 blocks in a row in order for your attack to be actually, viable. And how long does it take if, 51% is basically a coin flip? How many times you have to flip a coin in order to get heads 6 times? It's not easy. And while that's happening, the rest of the Bitcoin mining space is adding on more miners, is adding on more hash power. It's getting more and more difficult to attack. It is such a difficult system to attack already. I'm never going to put something out there that's going to make me have, a dunce written on my face, but it is so difficult to attack already. You would be hard pressed to convince me that it would ever be feasibly possible.
Right.
Cool.
Cool. That's pretty cool.
The equivalent amount of the energy consumed by New Zealand today.
How big is New Zealand?
Big? I don't know. It's a country.
Did you do any research, Brandon? Here, I'll look it up.
Several square kilometers.
If I could tell you the square kilometers of New Zealand off the top of my head,
I've never heard of
You'd be a freak.
I don't know what a kilometer
That or you
is.
just put it in your article that you just read.
yeah, I would just
I'm
put
an
it in the
American,
article and actually,
alright.
do a good job. But
Let's talk miles.
Talking
I'm talking miles.
Talking miles. Talking diameters.
I'm talking three things. I talk miles, I talk feet, and I talk beef. All right?
And sometimes when I'm the Boston Whaler, I talk knots.
Oh, man, this episode's all over the place. Now, Brandon, when you were talking about the energy, that's what a Bitcoin should cost, like the energy in, energy out. Like that's the value of it.
it makes sense, right?
It makes sense. It makes me think of how much the U.S. Mint loses making pennies.
Yeah.
Like it's silly.
Like
Wasting copper to
yeah.
make pennies. I'm looking at it right here. It says they lost $69 million last year making pennies between the loss of copper and shipping cost.
I felt like 97% of pennies were zinc.
I think they have a little bit of copper in them.
Okay.
I might be wrong.
What's interesting though, and this is like another thing that I've said before, but when a country, it costs more money for them to print the value of the money they're printing, right? Like they're printing, let's say $1 billion, and it costs them $2 billion to print it.
In product,
You have literally just destroyed your economy. Like I said this, I think, in terms of Venezuela, but Venezuela, I think now basically prints, like it costs them more to print, like the paper itself is more valuable than the number printed on it.
Well, we had that stack of bolivars here, and like that's really like nice money. Like when it's like a new 100, like there's like that kind of like holographic like type print on it.
Yeah,
and like it feels like it's thick money. It's not crappy. Like
so,
that
you
costs some money to make that.
They don't want you to counterfeit the money.
It's
so
not
they make
worth, it. Not worth.
Exactly.
Worth anything.
But yeah, so like it's when you don't even have a mechanism by which you can inflate your currency in order to keep up with the cost of printing the money, like where do you go from there?
Yeah.
You have to just press the reset button and start over.
Just blow it all up.
Yeah.
Start a war.
Maybe you invent something called the petro and force people to use it. But
so there's been a lot of talk about an impending recession. And I'm just curious, do you think it's going to happen again? And do you think it's going to be, if it does, do you think it's going to be as bad as it was in 2008?
It's a good question. So the housing bubble was unprecedented, right? Like that's crazy. And it's the reason why this last recession was so bad. I'm not going to downplay the effects of a recession, but the last one we had was awful, right?
Well, the housing market is way more stable now.
Right. And so like what a recession is on its face isn't that. Like that was almost a depression, right? Like there were a lot of economic measures by which you could actually call that a depression, right? A recession is when you just have like, I think it's 3/4 of GDP decline, or maybe it's a stock market decline. I don't remember exactly what it is, but like it's an actual thing, and it doesn't have to be that bad to be considered a recession. So when we talk about recession, yes, it's bad, but it's not crazy 2008 kind of bad necessarily, right? I think that a recession is probably inevitable just from the standpoint of the fact that we've been in the longest bull market in the history of the United States, right? Like the past 15, 17 years. The past.
Let's see, would have started.
I'd say about 100 years.
The past 10 years. Well, yeah, 100 years, right? But the past 10 years, basically, we've been in a bull market.
That makes sense because, that makes sense. Because I think it started with Obama, right?
Yeah.
Or like that was kind of like the upward tick there.
Basically, when you measure the bottom of the sell-off of the stock market to now, which I think the bottom happened somewhere in 2008, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really long growth cycle. And we went really high in the growth cycle too. You deserve, like the markets all would say that like you are due for some cooling off and some downward trends for a little while. And that's just a part of a healthy market, right? What the caveat to all of that is kind of two things. And the first one is the classic question of, if everyone expects it to be a recession, will there be a recession? I don't know.
Like self-fulfilling prophecy,
right.
basically.
Will it make it more likely? Will it make it less likely? Will people trade against it? Will people end up making it happen just because they think it's going to happen? Right? Who knows? That's one of those economic questions that you can't really answer with any sort of 100% certainty. And the second thing is that we have been all trending towards these negative interest rates. So if the government's willing to go negative on their interest rates, presumably they can continue to just prop up the economy to where by no metrics are we actually technically in a recession, except for the fact that everyone just doesn't seem to be progressing and our society just seems like it's falling in quicksand, and yet they have this never-ending rope that they keep pulling down to kind of keep themselves from going under. You know, and it's like the rope is falling too, but they can keep kind of pulling up on it as it's falling. We're almost trying to create like a little perpetual motion machine. It means that when you finally actually do fall and you run out of rope, you know, the crash is that much worse. But it is possible that we've created some sort of way by which you can basically suspend the downward movement at the trade-off of probably a lot longer sideways movement. I don't know. It's all hypothesis and conjecture.
As Matthew McConaughey would say, it's all fairy dust.
It is.
It's a flat circle, man.
You know what I do? I just buy Bitcoin. I don't worry about it. And I know that the
not
system
investment advice.
Right. Not financial advice. I'm talking about what I do. And the system that we're creating with Bitcoin is just, by all measures, comparably a better system. And so that's what I focus on. And then you kind of let the rest kind of inevitably play out.
The Bitcoin Magazine podcast is a BTC Media produced podcast on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. Theme music provided by Billy Sly from the Crypto Cantina. Visit bitcoinmagazine.com for more in-depth news, analysis, and resources about the most successful peer-to-peer currency. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at Bitcoin Magazine. Find and subscribe to the show wherever else you get your podcasts. And don't forget to rate us. Remember, it really helps us improve the show. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.